Okay, since my last video where I took everybody through my processes here, I've had a lot of requests for doing more painting videos. So it occurred to me as I was sitting here basing my Centigores, why don't I put some of this on tape? Just a couple things here. Maybe you might have noticed some of the Centigores are missing an arm. What I did was, since I like versatility, I know these guys are kind of fast cav, you probably don't want to put a standard with them, but I wanted the option. So what I did was I drilled this guy out, his torso there, sunk a magnet in there, it's flush, and then I've got the option of giving him a spear arm. I drilled that out, there's a magnet in there. If I can get this to line up while I'm holding the camera, there, so he can have a spear. Or if I desire, I can make him a standard bearer. It doesn't like to stay, it's all metal, so a little versatility there, always good. Anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm just putting some rocks onto the base before I flock it. In order to do this, you need a few things. You need some glue, got my glue here, and you need some rocks. I've picked up a variety of rocks and things that I found around whenever I see anything neat. Put it in these little bins here. These are, I kind of sort them by size and color. Well, maybe not so much size. It's a lighter shade of rock here. Back here I've got the red sandstone stuff that I can just find very easily out here. And then this is kind of more of a gravel and sand. Sometimes I'll dip them in that. For these guys, since some of them already have rocks that I've painted a gray, I decided to go with the grayer rocks. So what I do is I take the rock here and I kind of see which way it's going to lay for me. And then I pick it up with my tweezers. And then I've got a little bit of glue here already poured out. Dip it in there. Try not to get the tweezers in the glue, because then they'll stick to stuff. And then find a place on the base where you want it. And then boom, slap it down. Then while there's still wet glue around there, I take the static grass. Got the Gale Force 9 stuff here. And I like to do this one-handed. Use my tripod. Kind of sprinkle it around there, get some of it on, and then shake it off. Normally I do this over here. Let me see if I can. And it leaves a little. I'm probably going to have to go back later and touch these guys up. So that's how I get the, first I put the rocks down, and then I've got this tumbleweed I found in my garage. I'm experimenting around with that. I've got like a little thing sticking up there and a little, like a limb. These guys live in the forest. I read their fluff earlier tonight to try and get a better idea how I wanted to present them. So next we go to the flocking. Let me get set up to show you that. Okay, now I'm all ready to start my flocking. What I have here is I have a brush that I use just for this process, and I'll tell you why. This right here is a 50-50 mixture of water and Elmer's glue. I always keep a jar of this, and when it gets too low I add some more glue and more water so that I don't have to stick my brush down as far in there. Watered down, I use a 50-50 mixture of the Elmer's. I think this is called PVA overseas. And then I get my brush wet here, dab it off, and get some of this stuff on it. Let me move this so I can see it a little bit better. Then I've got my little flock bin here, and then I go around and I just put it on the top surface of the base. Careful not to get any on the edges. If you do, it's really no big deal, because you can get it off in the next step here. And you want to try and get, I try and get in between the toes. This stuff doesn't really dry that quick, so if you do get some on a toe or an ankle or a boot or anything like that, you can get it right off. And as well as if you get some on the edge of the base. Sometimes for these bigger bases you might have to do a couple of coats. For the smaller bases, it's usually you can get it all at one go. Go just around, get right up underneath the rocks, up by the static grass, and then keep the brush very moist. You don't want any of the Elmer's drying in there. Then you kind of dip it in your flock. If you push it down into the flock, you can end up pushing some of the glue around. So I like to just gingerly set it in there and then tap it and have the flock cover it in all directions. And then I shake it off, and then I hold it away from the flock and then blow. Trust me, you don't want to blow near this opening. I did it once, I think, and flock went everywhere. And then there you go. There's a flocked base with the rocks on it. The static grass, yeah, I'm going to have to probably reapply that because it's not turning out too well. And then if you see any places where it didn't take too well, like right here on this edge, you can just kind of touch up, go back, just get a little bit on the brush, and just go around the edge. You might get some of your static grass on the brush, and it might get into the static, or not the static grass, the flock on the brush. It might get into your glue mixture, but that's okay, because the only thing you're really using this for is for the basis. So, and then a couple other places here I want to touch up. And then when I do at this stage, I usually just kind of dip it in to get those areas. And tap, tap, tap. And now you can see I got a little bit of overhang on the front there. You can just get your brush wet and just sort of swipe along like that. Maybe touch it up with your finger, or you got the paper towel handy. You can go along and get a nice clean line there. And that's how I do my retro bases. Not the most inspiring thing. I'm trying to branch out and get more creative. If you got any tips, I'd be more than happy to hear them. So then now what I try and do is go back in with the static grass and then kind of get the areas where I want this stuff to be. Maybe put some around the edge of the rocks. And I found too that this static grass, I bought it, the color seems to match my flock a bit too much, so it's really, even though it's there, it's really hard to see. Then if you hang this stuff upside down, it'll sort of hang, look like it's standing up. So it's there, but you can't really see it against the flock. And that's how I go about making my bases a finished product. I've read someplace where you're supposed to clear coat them before you flock them. I flock them first and then clear coat them. Haven't really had any problems, so I just keep doing it the way I've been doing it. But yeah, if you got any tips for doing really creative bases, I've seen some of y'all's bases and they look so much better than mine. So let me know. Thanks. The thought had occurred to me as I was finishing these guys that maybe I should give you a little bit of warning when I was talking about I got some sand and gravel here. I can't advise you to just go out and pick up any sand or stuff you might come across. Like, don't go to the beach and scoop up a bunch of sand thinking you're going to use it to base your miniatures. Stuff lives in sand and dirt and earth, like tiny little things and like little weird eggs that might hatch and microscopic crustaceans and whatnot. So there's a reason why the GW stuff, you look at it and you go, oh hey, why should I pay $5 for that stuff that's in my backyard? Well, you're not so much paying for what's in it as you're paying for what's not in it. I mean, you can go home and try and sterilize the stuff by baking it in an oven to make sure everything's dead, but I had a real bad experience with that one time when I was trying to sterilize some dirt, and it had these small little bits of like trees or something, and then they didn't catch fire, but they smoldered, so the smoke alarm was going off and my whole house smelled like it had been on fire, and it was not fun. So yeah, I can't recommend you picking up the small stuff. Get bigger stuff like this, you should be fine, or if you really know there's nothing in it, or if you leave it in quarantine for a while, maybe think about it. But enough with the warning. Here we go. Here's my finished product. The Centaurs with their lackluster bases. Hopefully coming soon to a battle report near you. I'd like to get these guys out onto the table and see how they do.